So a little bit about me. I am a mum of 4, and yes, I realize there are only 3 children in that picture, but I promise you there is another one. And I'm a health and wellness specialist, an executive coach, a wellness coach. I'm a nutritionist, a personal trainer, a breathwork practitioner. I have a background in psychology, and I specialize in working with people really who need someone on their side to help them to become their healthiest and happiest self. And that's pretty much what today's session is about. I'm also on the charity's Wellbeing board, and I work with quite a few clients who do have MCAS, although I don't have it myself. So today's webinar is all about building resilience and support through 3 core areas. And these areas are self-care, sleep, and emotional well-being. Now, I know that the idea of self-care when you have MCAS can be a little bit laughable, because I'm not pretending that having MCAS is easy. It absolutely is not. But it is about giving you some realistic, evidence-based, informed tools that you can use to just make things a little more manageable. And all those little things can really add up to making a big difference. So the agenda for today, part 1, is all about self-care that actually supports you. Part 2 is about sleep. Part 3 is about your emotional well-being and mental load. And part 4, we're looking at some takeaways, and then we're going to go into Q&A. Now, as we go along, I have got access to the chat. So as we go along, if there are things that you want to talk about or ask, then please feel free to do so. But remember that we are recording this session. So if it's anything particularly sensitive that you don't want put up on YouTube, then I recommend you wait till the end when the recording will stop, and then we can probably talk a little bit more openly. I'm also going to invite you to share some experiences and some thoughts in the chat as we go along. So I would love it if you did that. So let's get into part 1. So let's be honest, when you live with MCAS, the phrase self-care can feel impossible. And I'm not talking about self-care in terms of bath bombs and scented candles when your skin might well react to these things. And I'm not talking about green smoothies when even healthy food can sometimes be a bit of a minefield. So what is self-care when you live with a body that doesn't follow the usual rules? Well, we're talking about self-care as safety, self-care as stability, and self-care as self-trust. So what might this mean? As I mentioned, we really need to look beyond the traditional ideas of self-care into the realms of what it needs to be with someone with MCAS. And self-care will mean and look different to each of us. So what might it mean for you? Let's have a little think. So it could be creating a daily rhythm that you could rely on. It could mean planning your day around your energy, not around guilt or shoulds. It could be setting up your physical environment to reduce triggers and reduce decision fatigue. It could be no and setting your boundaries. It could be putting guidelines in place to prevent difficult conversations or decisions. So, for example, one of my clients won't go to lunch or dinner at her friends' houses because she gets totally fed up of having to explain what she can and she can't eat. So her rule is that if you want to socialize with her, that you have to go to a restaurant and she has to suggest it, because she will know that there is things on that menu that she can order, and that makes her feel comfortable, that makes her feel safe, and therefore she knows she's really going to enjoy that experience. So with that in mind, what could for you? What other ways can you think of to take care of yourself? I would love for you now to take a few moments and think about what self-care could look like for you. You can do this in your notebook, you can do this on a piece of paper, just a few seconds thinking above and beyond the kind of the traditional ideas of what society might tell us self-care looks like. what could it look like for you? And obviously you can use, if any of them resonated with you, you can use any of those. I think we've got someone in the waiting room getting a little message, if you could let them in. Couple of minutes now. Then if you're happy to share, we would love to hear from you, because if that works for you, it could well work for somebody else. So if you can think of anything that you do for self-care for yourself, bearing in mind all of the restrictions that you face, please do share that so that we can all learn from each other. Nikki says breath work. Absolutely. We're going to do a little bit of that today. Grounding outside. Again, we're going to talk about grounding. Grounding is amazing. And I'm actually in Costa Rica at the moment, and it's a 7-hour time difference. And I made my whole family take off their shoes and do some grounding because it's excellent for jet lag. So grounding has lots and lots of benefits, which we'll talk about. I could do with using devices less. I think, Cindy, we could all do with using devices less. And that's an absolutely excellent one. Mindfulness and meditation has helped loads, says Julie. Yeah. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about those later, but these are excellent. Just getting back in touch with our body, quietening down all the chatter, the mental chatter, but also the chatter from outside. So those are really lovely ideas, which we will touch on a little bit more later. Thank you very much for sharing. So we're going to go into a little exercise. I don't know whether any of you have done this before, but it's called the energy budget. Now, I believe that Charisse very kindly sent round a workbook that I had put together for you all before the session. If you haven't downloaded it, do download it. If you haven't got it, don't worry. You can just use a piece of paper. I just tried to make it a little bit so you had a little bit more structure, but don't worry if you don't have it. A piece of paper will be absolutely fine. We're going to go into this exercise. Now, what I want you to do is just imagine that you have £100 worth of energy every single day. Every day you get a new £100 worth of energy. I want you to write down how you're spending that energy right now, how you're spending it mentally, how you're spending it physically, and how you're spending it emotionally, because those three are all really important. And once you've written those down, I want you to ask yourself, what's one thing off this list that I could remove entirely? What's one thing that I could delegate to somebody else or change altogether to protect that budget and free up some of this time, some of this energy for me, for self-care? Okay, because we all have a limited amount of time in the day, and self-care, I know with 4 kids, it's very low down on my to-do list every single day, but it is so, so important. So of that £100, where can you free up some of that budget? I'd like you to spend some time now. You've got about 5 minutes. So write down what you're currently spending your energy on in those 3 main areas, and then ask yourself, what one thing, I'm not asking you to change your whole life, just one thing that you could cut out, delegate, or change to protect that budget and free up some energy for you, for self-care. Got about another 2 minutes, and then I'm going to invite you to share. Okay, great. If you could finish up now, that would be lovely. And I know that Cindy probably, hopefully, used maybe using her devices less to free up her energy for some time. So that's a really, really good one. Reducing that screen time to free up some energy. Does anybody else have anything that they could share? What they're going to reduce their time doing or delegate or switching in order to protect that budget? Reduce work outside work hours. Nikki, I think that's something that certainly I absolutely need to do. And reduced guilt linked to this, time for self-care. I think that's a massive one. That guilt, feeling that you're wasting time, feeling that you should be doing something else, you should be being productive, you should be accomplishing things rather than actually looking after yourself. So I think that's something that certainly resonates with me, and I'm sure resonates with a lot of people. Anybody else? Thanks for sharing, Nikki. Anybody else? Getting a cleaner so I don't have to do any more vacuuming because my arms are, yeah. Getting a cleaner, delegating. We all need to clean, unfortunately, but delegating it to somebody else. Yeah, I love that one. Thanks, Wendy. Reduce or cut out draining friends and those who are always negative. Yeah. And that's really, really hard to do, especially when those friendships are long-term friendships, the people that you've been with for a long time, cutting them out and maybe making space for some new friendships, maybe people who give you a little bit more energy, give you more back. That's great, Julie. Thank you very much. Okay, well, hopefully that's given you some food for thought. And I know I didn't give you very much time now, but this is a really nice one that you can do on your own. You can do it at any time because there's always ways that we can find more energy. There's always ways that we can find more time to free up, to give ourselves that self-care opportunity. So I would invite you to do this maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months. Come back to it and see where you can eke out a little bit more time for yourself. Lovely. Okay, so we're going to go into part 2 and we're going to talk about sleep. Now, sleep can be quite a challenge for people with MCAS. Not always, because everybody is different and MCAS is extremely complex. But for a lot of people with MCAS, it can be a challenge. And that's not just because of the annoying symptoms like itching or pain or gastrointestinal distress. There's lots and lots of things going on here. Inflammation can be an issue. And so can chronic activation of the stress response. And we're going to speak about that a little bit more. So let's look at some of the symptoms that may be affecting your sleep. This is when mast cell mediators like cytokines, I'm sure you've heard all these big long words before. These are your mast cell mediators, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and tryptase can cause systematic inflammation in your body. So those symptoms, itching, flushing, hives, GI discomfort, often this gets worse at night, unfortunately, temperature dysregulation, and anxiety or panic-like symptoms when you're in the bed, that elevated heart rate, the inability to really calm yourself down. And then that inflammation, because inflammation actually works to affect melatonin production, and melatonin is your natural sleep hormone. That's the hormone that your body produces when it's time to go to sleep. And therefore, it really disrupts the normal circadian rhythm, making it much harder for people with MCAS to fall asleep and then to stay asleep. So mast cells don't just cause allergic type reactions. They also play a big role in the functionality of the nervous system. So when they're unstable or overactive, they can release histamine and these other inflammatory mediators that work to stimulate the nervous system. And we don't want the nervous system stimulated, particularly not at nighttime. Because histamine is not just involved in allergies, it's also a wakefulness promoting neurotransmitter in the brain. So it's telling your brain to stay awake. Mast cells constantly releasing histamine is basically a message to your brain to stay awake and stay alert. which is obviously the least important thing that your brain should be doing at night. In fact, it's counter to what you really want it to be doing. You do not want your brain to be being told it needs to stay awake at nighttime. And therefore, it can be very, very difficult to fall asleep and to stay asleep. This means that people with MCAS often live in a state of sympathetic dominance. Okay, this means that the fight or flight, you've probably heard of the fight or flight. It's in overdrive, this part of your nervous system, and the rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system, can't take over easily. And that's what needs to happen at night. The parasympathetic nervous system needs to take over from the sympathetic nervous system. So this means you're more likely to have those racing thoughts, the increased heart rate, trouble falling asleep, frequent waking. And then when you wake up, you feel wired. You don't feel rested at all. So you feel like you've not had that restorative sleep that is so, so important for our waking life. So what can we do about this? It's difficult, but there are some little tools that I want to give you to have in your bucket that you can pull out to help if and when you do experience this sort of thing. And maybe for some of you, it's every single night, but maybe for some of you, it's not quite so frequent. Happen rather than just living through it, taking control, trying to do something to make a positive change. And one of those things is sleep hygiene. Does anybody know what sleep hygiene is? It's kind of a fancy term. Anybody know what sleep hygiene is? Put a message in the chat if you know. Maybe nobody knows because it is quite a fancy term. But
Yeah,
sleep hygiene.
it's about putting tips in place, like darkening your room and different tips to make you sleep better.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of having that bedtime routine. And we do this brilliantly for our children, right? The children, they, get into their jammies, they maybe have a book, they then brush their teeth, you then snuggle them, maybe sing them a lullaby. And all of this is preparing the body and the brain for going to sleep. But what we generally do is get into bed, watch some TV, turn the TV off, and expect to fall asleep. Well, unfortunately, we're not robots, and it just doesn't work like that. So sleep hygiene, particularly tailored for sensitive systems, is really, really important. And just, this isn't really about sleep hygiene, but no blue lights within 90 minutes before bed. Okay, the research shows that blue lights come from things like our devices, our iPads, TVs, phones. They can disrupt the circadian rhythm because, in theory, the light mimics the light of the sun coming up in the morning. So if the brain is seeing blue light just before bed, the brain's actually getting a signal that it's morning time. So watching TV and then trying to go straight to sleep, the brain's like, hang on, it's morning. Why we just had that blue light? Why are you now trying to get me to go to sleep? It's morning. So in theory, not having any of those blue lights around 90 minutes before bed. Obviously, this is easier said than done, and it's definitely not something that I can do. So if you can't, then there are things you can get on Amazon. They're like £10. They're called blue blocking glasses. And you've probably seen people, in the wellness space wearing these kind of yellow or orange framed glasses. That's essentially what it is. It's cutting out the blue light. It's mimicking candlelight, sunset, sun going down, you get a more orange hue to everything. And it's mimicking that. Okay, so that's a really easy tip. Calming activities. Maybe it's listening to some classical music. Maybe it's doing a little bit of yoga nidra. I know somebody mentioned breath work. Breath work's a lovely thing to do before bed. Just things to try to calm the nervous system. You don't want to be doing, you probably wouldn't anyway because it's a trigger, but any kind of, high intensity interval training or watching a scary movie or, doing anything that's really going to stimulate you. That is not going to help you to sleep. So you really want to make sure the room is dark, you've got quiet, it's peaceful, and you basically do the same routine every single night, like you do for children. You do the same thing every night. So it's just preparing yourself to go to sleep. Next, we want to look at working with the circadian rhythm. And people often say that actually your bedtime routine needs to start in the morning because, as I mentioned before, the the sun produces a different kind of light at different times of the day. And all of those, the different types of light, are actually signaling, giving different messages to your brain and your body. So the sun that's first coming up, if you can get up and look outside and you can get some sun on your eyes, that is information to your body that it is morning. And then again at midday, going outside, seeing where the sun is, the light that the sun is producing. And then again, as the sun is going down, all of this is telling your body, giving your body information, helping work with your circadian rhythms. And then having that consistent routine. I mentioned that before, but also having consistent wake times and bedtimes. I know we've all got Netflix and Prime Video and Apple TV, and you just want to watch one more episode. But if you can set an alarm on your phone or something, there's a very pretty one I've got on my Apple phone that goes tinkle, 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 and it tells me that it's bedtime at 10:25. I get that and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, it is my bedtime. I should turn off the TV. Just trying to make sure that you are going to bed at the same time, you're waking up at the same time. Just means that when you go to bed, your body is then tired, your brain is tired. It knows it's time to go to sleep because it was time to go to sleep yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. Trying to keep that consistency is going to help so much. And then some down regulation, some techniques, and we're going to look at these to really calm the nervous system, gentle movement, self-massage, warm bath maybe, calming story, something that's going to really down regulate that nervous system. Okay, now there are certain supplements, and you've got to be particularly careful, but there are certain supplements that people with MCAS can tolerate well, like magnesium glycinate's really good for sleep. And again, we're pretty deficient, the majority of us, in magnesium because we're just not getting it from the soil anymore. It's so depleted of magnesium that we're therefore not getting it. And it's involved in, I think it's between 300 and 500 chemical processes within the body. It's really important for sleep. So if you can tolerate that, or always check with your doctor and check for the fillers that are used because those fillers can often be a trigger. But there are some supplements that you can look into that do really help with sleep. And then, as someone mentioned before, looking at those environmental adjustments, temperature, lighting. Ideally, want a really dark room with no annoying flashing lights. You also want quite a cool room, and the research suggests around 16 degrees is best for getting into a really deep sleep. That's much too cold for me. I'm absolutely freezing. I need a hat and gloves if I'm in 16 degrees. But apparently, the cooler the room is, the better it is for getting into a deep sleep. And then any kind of rituals that are signaling to your nervous system that you are safe are going to be really, really helpful to you. So, what else have you got that you find helps with sleep? What have you got? What could you share? Do put something in the chat if you're willing to share anything, because if it helps you, it's likely it's going to help somebody else. I have my phone on nighttime mode and it goes like a gray color. Yeah, that's really helpful. That's very good. Any advice about vivid dreams or occasional nightmares? Leave me feeling exhausted on waking. Angie, yeah, absolutely. Any of these things, you want to just calm down the nervous system. And we're going to do a breathwork technique next. But every time you breathe in, it stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. And every time you breathe out, it stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. Breathing in is your heart rate going up. Like think about when you're scared, you go, okay, that's stimulating fight or flight. But then think about something relaxing. Think about something like, oh, something's talking to me in this room. Sorry about that. Breathing out. Oh, I'm gonna have a massage. Oh, I'm in a hot bath. You're breathing out. That is stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system. That is relaxing your body. That is slowing your heart rate. Really working with your breath when you're feeling your heart rate up, when you're anxious, when you're nervous, is going to be a really easy, quick technique that you can use immediately. Meditation before bed. Meditation before bed it feels to me like a really natural thing to do. They do say don't do it too immediately before bed because it can then link itself with sleep. And that can be problematic. So trying to have a little bit of a gap between meditating and sleep is ideal. Lavender, chamomile tea, anything to do with lavender and chamomile, really relaxing. having tea before bed can sometimes make you need to get up and do a pee in the middle of the night. It certainly does for me. But then I have had 4 children, so most things make me need to pee. But yes, lovely. Having a chamomile or a lavender tea, smelling lavender, little pillow spray, if you can tolerate that. Things like that can be very, very relaxing. I have issues with breathing out, breathlessness and wheezing it. Do try it still. I would absolutely try it still. It is a way to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. And do talk to your doctor about that, because do you have any kind of asthma or something which is creating the wheeziness? What's creating that? It sounds like a bronchioli issue. But anything else that people try before bed that might be helpful to others? Had some lovely ideas there. I like listening to some calming music as I'm brushing my teeth and putting on my creams, and I try and do like some gua sha, where I'm trying to do like a facial massage with like a tallow which has got lavender in it. And so as I'm doing that, it's kind of filling my senses with lavender as I'm kind of doing I hold a lot of tension in my jaw, so I do quite a lot of massage around my jaw to try and release some tension in my jaw. So that's quite a nice one, some kind of facial massage. Yeah, tapping, lovely. All right, okay, let's get into that exercise. Some of you have spoken about breath work. It sounds like maybe you know a little bit about breath work. It's just such a useful tool. It really helps to calm alertness and nervous system overdrive. So if you turn to your workbook now, and if you don't have that workbook, feel free to just write it down. How are you feeling now? And if it isn't listed in the workbook, feel free to write down how you're feeling. So just a little noticing where you're at right now, so that we can then compare it to later, just to see whether it's had any, the exercise had any immediate effect on you. So how are you feeling right now? Give that a little circle or write it down. And the breathwork reset that we are going to do now is breathing in for 4. You're then holding your breath for 7, and then you're breathing out for 8. If this feels too much for you, half it. Okay, so breathe in for 2, hold for 2 to 3 seconds, and then breathe out for 4. Okay, this is just a kind of a guideline, the 4, 7, 8, but you can tailor it to work for you. So if you do get breathlessness and wheezy, yeah, Jill's saying that she gets wheezy since developing MCAS. Yeah, breathing in things that you're intolerant to, absolutely, yeah, that will definitely happen. Chemical smells, cooking fumes. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So yes, do feel free to tailor this to you if you don't want it to be a stress, right? You don't want to, oh, I don't hold my breath any longer. It's got to feel relaxing and natural. Okay, so we're going to breathe in for a count of 4. We're going to hold for 7, and we're going to breathe out for 8. I'm going to do a few rounds counting for you. I'm then going to stop, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this in your own time, just in case my counting doesn't work for your timing, or you're doing a slightly different if you're doing some slightly different numbers to the 4, 7, 8. So I'm going to stop talking, and then I'm just going to be silent for a couple of minutes. Okay. And then when I start talking, feel free to go back to your normal breathing pattern. Okay. So just find somewhere that you can be comfortable for just a couple of minutes. So if you just need to release some tension in your neck and shoulders, feel free to do that now. Your jaw. And then it can be helpful to just close your eyes gently. If not, just find something that you can just gaze at, not staring, just gentle gaze. And when you're ready, we're going to breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Continue with your own count. Now go back to your normal breathing pattern. Now, turn back to your workbook and take a second just to think about how you're feeling now. And write that down or circle it if it's there. Is anyone willing to share how they're feeling before and after? Did they notice any change? Feeling calmer? That's great, Nikki. Exhausted before, more relaxed after. Ray, that's lovely. It's really good. Relaxed. And you know, sometimes when my kids are driving me insane and just screaming, I put my mummy puts herself in a timeout and I go and literally hide in a cupboard and I will do this. And when I come out, my state is completely changed. I'm no longer yelling at them and wanting to strangle them. I feel much more able to talk to them as humans and to try and rationalize with them and try and sort the situation out rather than just yelling. And it really does only take a few minutes for you to be able to completely change how you're feeling. So if you are struggling at any time of the day or night with those racing thoughts, with that overstimulated nervous system, just remove yourself from the situation by just closing your eyes or actually physically removing yourself and hiding in the cupboard like I do. And just take a few moments just to do that. And if the 4-7-8 doesn't work for you, 2-3-4 works just as well. What you're trying to do is to get that out breath to be twice as long as that in breath, so that you are signaling to that parasympathetic nervous system to start overriding the sympathetic nervous system. Lovely. Well done. Okay, we are now going to go into emotional well-being, because living with MCAS isn't just physical, it's emotional as well. The stress, medical gaslighting, the grief over what life used to be, all of these things can really take their toll on your emotional well-being. And it is completely normal to feel exhausted and lonely and anxious or overwhelmed, like you're constantly on trying to manage your symptoms and foods and meds and routines. You're absolutely not imagining that it is hard. It is so hard. But emotional well-being is possible, not by ignoring the reality of the situation that you're in, but by naming it, by showing yourself compassion, and by having some tools to really help you to move through it. And that's what we're going to look at now. Some of the tools that might help you. And these are some evidence-based tools, okay, that have been shown to help people with MCAS and their emotional well-being. Okay. As we mentioned earlier, many people live with MCAS and without MCAS, but they live in a very much a fight or flight mode. Somatic tools can help to downregulate this sympathetic nervous system, and they're really, really key. So, gentle breath work. As I mentioned before, the extended exhales, really thinking about making that exhale longer than that inhale. Vagal toning. So what this means, it's basically things that you can do which stimulate and strengthen your vagus nerve, because this vagus nerve plays a really important role in the functioning of the parasympathetic nervous system and its ability to regulate your bodily functions and basically promote relaxation. And it's kind of optimizing the body's own natural ability to recover from stress and maintain a balance. And some things that you can do are humming, sounds weird, chanting, gargling, splashing your water with cold or cool water. Progressive muscle relaxation. Now, if you've done lots of meditation, which I think maybe some of you have done before, but it's, or maybe at the end of a yoga session, they often do it, progressive muscle relaxation. And it's basically involves tensing your muscles and then relaxing them, doing it with specific muscle groups in the body until you've done every single muscle group. And it just promotes an overall feeling of relaxation. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go onto YouTube or somewhere like that, and there will be people doing it and you can follow along. It's a really lovely way to relax the whole body. TRE, that is tension and trauma releasing exercises. And you want to do this with professional guidance, but it's basically using a series of very gentle exercises to activate the body's natural ability to tremor or shake. And this releases really sort of deep-seated tension and stress and trauma, which are held by the body, particularly in the muscles and in the nervous system. And these tremors are basically the body's natural reflex. And by stimulating them, you can then afterwards help to calm the nervous system, which promotes relaxation and restoring the body's natural balance. But I would urge you to do that with a professional rather than trying to do that on your own. And then trauma-informed mindfulness. I know that this has kind of been mentioned before, which is amazing, but not all mindfulness is helpful when you're hypervigilant. It can be extremely difficult, and then it becomes stressful because you feel like you can't do it. But very gentle body-based mindfulness done in really, really short bursts, not, oh, I'm going to do an hour of mindfulness now. It's really hard for anybody, but done in really short doses can really help to sort of re-establish that internal safety. And somebody mentioned this earlier, grounding. Lovely thing to do, going outside, taking your shoes off. Ideally, you're not doing this on concrete because it won't work, but you're doing it in the sand, in the soil, on the grass. And then just notice 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can smell. Just really trying to be present where you are in the moment rather than, oh, I've got to pick the kids up and oh, I've got this on my shopping list and oh, I haven't done this. Really being there in the moment, grounding yourself. Yoga Nidra, it's a lovely thing to do. Really relaxing yoga, or walking meditations or mindful movement in nature. The importance of nature can't be underestimated. I was looking at some research the other day and it was saying for proper, like true emotional well-being and happiness, we all need 60 minutes outside in nature every single day. And I'm not talking about being beside a motorway with cars and fumes. I don't think that's going to do it, but actually being outside in a park or in your garden or looking at trees, being around nature, 60 minutes. And how many of us actually get that? I would imagine very, very few of us. And then we've got some cognitive emotional tools. Again, these are all kind of like big words, but they're not difficult things. These kind of chronic illnesses often come with, as I spoke about before, anxiety and grief and isolation. And tools like this help you to really make sense of where you are without kind of getting stuck into it. So journaling is a lovely thing to do, giving it a bit of structure though, rather than here's an empty piece of paper. What am I going to be writing about? Little prompts like, what's true for me right now? What do I need today? What am I learning from the experience that I'm going through? Little prompts that will help focus your mind on something that's helpful. Cognitive behavioral therapy, probably heard about this. It's a really, really useful tool for health anxiety and emotional spirals. And then acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. And this is about working with distress rather than trying to fight it or ignore it. Again, you would need a professional to help you with these. And then connection and validation. MCAS can be extremely isolating. I know some of the clients that I work with, they just want somebody to just listen to them, really, without judging or trying to fix the problem. And emotional well-being really improves when you feel seen and understood. So support groups, online or in person. I mean, for you, I know you've got an amazing Facebook group, so that's great. But really looking for some support, asking for support, working with a therapist or coach who's familiar with chronic illness, and then connecting with friends and family who can offer empathy without trying to fix you. And then gentle rhythms and consistency. As we spoke about, your nervous system loves routine. It loves predictability. So establishing those daily rhythms, those daily practices, even tiny ones, really helps to reteach your body that it's safe, that your environment is a safe environment. So that consistent bedtime routine, morning sun exposure to reset the circadian rhythm, gentle movement, stretching, tai chi every day if it's tolerated, and then regular meal times. So you're supporting that blood sugar and your mast cell stability. So nature and light, I spoke about this, so important for lowering the stress hormones and reducing inflammation. And if you can't really get outside, just try sitting near a window in the morning sun, spending 10 minutes at least a day outside, even if it's barefoot on grass or just walking very, very slowly. Adding indoor plants or even nature imagery. There's been some really interesting research on hospitals, and having just pictures of plants in the room helps people to recover faster than if they just have blank walls, or if they don't have nature imagery on the walls. Putting those things into your living space, if you can't go outside, or even if you can go outside, is a really nice, easy tool to use. And then self-compassion. One of the biggest emotional stressors I found in MCAS is the push crash cycle. So it's learning to honor your limits without any guilt or emotional medicine. So the energy budgeting one that we've already done today is a really nice little tool. Self-compassion practices. There's a doctor called Kristin Neff, and that's a really nice place to start if a lot of this is new to you. Self-Compassion by Dr. Kristin Neff, I can put this in the chat if it's useful, is a really good place to start. And then a bit of reframing. So replacing why can't I with what's actually possible for me today, showing yourself some compassion, avoiding that kind of judgmental, I should be doing this. There is no should. It's what's possible for me today, because what's possible for me today may not have been possible yesterday and may not be possible tomorrow. Focus on being here and now and working with how you're feeling in the moment. So we're going to go into a really great exercise, and we have to be quite quick because time is running out, and it's called inner critic versus inner coach. Now, we all have an inner critic. That is the little voice in the head constantly telling us we're not enough, not good enough, not accomplished enough, not clever enough, not successful enough, not healthy enough, not anything enough. It might say things like, you're lazy, or you're overreacting, or you should be better by now. And over time, that inner critic, that inner voice really takes a toll, emotionally and physically. And it's completely normal. We all have it. It's what we do with these thoughts that really determine how we feel and therefore our emotional well-being. Because if we allow the thoughts of our inner critic to rule, if we give it time and space, they're just going to get louder and become more and more dominant. But if we fight back against these thoughts, gradually they will begin to quieten and fade. And many people with MCAS can experience a very harsh inner critic. But we also have another voice. And this is the one that's kind. and grounded and wise. And in this exercise, we're going to explore how both of these show up for you, not just in your thoughts, but in your body. So turn to your workbook now, and if you don't have one, a piece of paper. I want you to remember a difficult moment. This might have been this morning. It might have been this afternoon. It might have been yesterday. It might have been last week. It doesn't matter when it was, something that immediately comes to mind. What was your inner critic saying at that moment? I want you to write down one or two actual phrases of what your inner critic said. I can't cope. What's wrong with me? No one else needs this much rest. What was it? One or two actual phrases that your inner critic said to you in that moment. Write them down word for word if you can. Okay, hopefully you've done that now. Step 2, I want you to notice how the critic shows up in your body. So I want you to close your eyes or just soften your gaze. And I want you to take a breath. And when you hear that inner critic's voice, where do you hear it in your body? Is there tension? Is there constriction? Is there a change in your posture, in the way that you breathe? I want you to mimic that same posture. What happens when you let your body take the shape of that? I want you to sit in that for just a couple of minutes. And you can say those words to yourself out loud or in your head to really try and get yourself feeling that critic in your body. Okay, now I want you to shift to that inner coach. This is the wise, compassionate part. We all have it. He or she might be very, very quiet, but we do have that part of ourselves that understands your limits and believes that you're doing the best that you very can, the very best that you can. So now I want you to bring to mind a different voice. That voice of the coach that believes that you are doing enough, that honors how hard you're trying. What would that voice say to you? In this moment, what would that voice say to you? The one that believes in you, the one that knows you're trying and doing your best. What would that voice say to you? And write it down. Again, a couple of sentences would be excellent. Could be you're not weak, or rest is not failure, or you're doing a great job listening to your body. What might that coach say to you? And now I want you to hear this voice in your body. So I want you to embody the coach. Again, feel free to close your eyes. How are you sitting when you're this coach, when you're hearing this coach? Are your shoulders suddenly relaxed? Is your breath slowed down? Is your central nervous system more calmed now you're not being criticized? How's your face feeling? Does it soften? Maybe you're taking up a little bit more space. You're not trying to feel so small. Maybe you're spreading your legs a little bit. Maybe your feet feel more firmly on the ground. Say those words that your inner coach is saying in your inner coach's voice, and say it from this posture. Now I want you to notice how these two voices showed up in your body. What was the difference? And which voice do you default to most often? Which is the loudest? Which is the clearest? Which was the most easy to hear? And then what could you do to help strengthen the voice of your inner coach on the difficult days, in those tough moments? What could you do to help strengthen that voice, to make that voice stronger in your body and in your head? And if anybody is happy to share, we would love to hear from you. I know we don't have a huge amount of time, but if anybody is happy to share what they noticed, which was easier to do, probably the inner critic, sadly, was probably easier to come up with the things that they say. It's probably easier to get into the posture of that critic than the coach. But if you notice what that coach does, if you notice what that coach says to you, then you can use that as prompts when you're feeling bad. You can find a piece of paper with it written down on and read it back to yourself. Force yourself into the posture of that inner coach. And when you're in the posture, it's so much easier to say the words when you're in that posture. So write it all down. Write down what you've noticed. This is your time to do this. So do it. And the reason that this works is because it's integrating two different things. It's integrating cognitive reframing with nervous system awareness. Okay, so your internal dialogue, what you're saying to yourself, impacts your physiology, what's going on with your body. And what's going on with your body impacts that internal dialogue. Okay, there's a two-way system. Over time, by practicing this shift, you're building up self-trust and compassion and a bit of nervous system flexibility, which are all so important for emotional well-being. Jill, thank you. My inner coach only ever talks to me when I reflect afterwards on a difficult situation. Okay, so what could you do, Jill, to strengthen the voice of that inner coach? What could you do? Did you manage anything down about what your inner coach says to you afterwards? Are there kind of some common phrases, some common words that your inner coach uses that you can write down and have as a prompt for when you're actually in the moment, in that difficult situation, that you can bring out that piece of paper and read it to you? Because if they are the words of your inner coach, they're going to resonate more with you than just a random "you are amazing," or "you are a strong, confident woman," or any of these things, which aren't necessarily the words that you would use for yourself. But if you have the words that your inner coach naturally uses, sorry, I'm looking up there because that's where that's where the chat is for me. If you use those words and you know that physiology, that when that coach comes, yes, your shoulders are back, yes, your head is up, yes, your spine is straighter, yes, you're feeling stronger. If you can put yourself in that physiology, it's going to be easier to bring the words of the inner coach to the forefront of your mind. Anybody else want to share, or Jill, would you like to expand? Okay, well, as we have 4 minutes left, well done. You've made it through the hour. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. And I think what the charity really wants to remind you is that you're not alone. And you are doing so much better than you think. There are ways to work with your body and your mind, not against it. And these really small little actions, these small things do add up to help. So I'd love for you now to take a moment to just write down one, two, but just one really small thing that you can take away from today's session, one tool that you are going to use going forwards for when you're in that difficult moment. What tool are you going to say, actually, I haven't tried that and I am going to give that a go today to see whether that can help me? What one tool could you take away from today's session? The breath work, Ray. Okay, great. I love that. So important, so useful, so easy, free. We love these free tools. You don't have to go and buy anything. You don't need anybody to help you with it. I need to control my anger and frustration better by doing more breath work. Yeah, it really, I can speak from personal experience. It definitely helps. It definitely does. Thank you, Nikki. Is there an issue with your webpage? The one on the presentation doesn't seem to work. Oh, I will look into that. Thank you for letting me know. Breathwork's coming through strong now. I love this. It is an amazing tool. And anybody who's ever given birth, I think really, that's when you really start realizing that breath work is incredible, when all you've got is your own breath. Getting out to nature more, Emma. Yeah. And I think in the UK, that's particularly difficult to do, certainly in city living, feet on the ground. Yeah. Get those shoes off. Feel the ground underneath your feet. Grounding. Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all.